What if, deep in the heart of a faith entirely devoted to the one God, there existed a secret that turned everything upside down? A secret that spoke of a divine family hidden within him? Sounds absurd, doesn't it? Now imagine that this idea isn't some heretical invention, but a central element of one of the most influential mystical currents in Jewish history, Kabbalah. It reveals not just one, but a four-part deity, a concept so unexpected, so provocative. But how is this possible? How did such an idea manage to embed itself and spread within a community so unshakably bound by strict monotheism? The answer isn't simple. It's woven into the mystery of ancient texts, into the deep spiritual needs of people from that era, and, perhaps, even into the whispers of other long-forgotten gods. To understand this incredible transformation, we must go back in time, the Middle Ages, a period filled with turbulent changes, religious quests, and a deep, almost desperate desire to understand the divine. It was here, in this bubbling cauldron of ideas, that Kabbalah was born, and it wasn't just another mystical school. Central to it is a concept that today sounds like an absolute paradox, the idea of a divine tetrad, four aspects of the divine that are not separate gods, but a single whole, yet existing in dynamic interconnectedness. Imagine one God, but existing as a hidden family within himself. This isn't just a metaphor. For Kabbalists, it's a living reality. Key texts like the Zohar, the foundation of Kabbalistic thought, unambiguously reveal this inner structure of the Godhead. They speak of hidden aspects, of masculine and feminine principles, of manifestation and withdrawal, all existing within the one. But then comes the big question: what allowed this idea to take root? What were the confounding factors that pushed it from the shadows of mystical speculation and turned it into a cornerstone of religious thought? Some would say it's simply an interpretation of existing texts, taken to its logical, albeit unexpected, conclusion. Others would argue that it's a response to spiritual needs, an attempt to give greater depth to an abstract God, to make him more accessible, more comprehensible. But what if there's something more? Something hidden in distant pagan beliefs, something that imperceptibly penetrated the monotheistic fabric, modified, adapted, but still preserved its essence. This is a hypothesis that changes everything. Ultimately, the Kabbalistic Tetrad is not just a historical note. It's an indicator of the ceaseless search for meaning, of humanity's need to understand the incomprehensible and to give form to the formless. It's proof of the plasticity of faith and how even the strictest dogmas can be broken and rethought in response to deep inner needs. The question remains, is this an evolution of a great thought or an echo of forgotten voices that still whisper in the depths of our faith? The answer, as often happens, may be more complex than we imagine, and perhaps it's waiting for us to discover it exactly where we least expect it, in the heart of the Godhead itself. There exists a teaching, an ancient, esoteric wisdom that has been whispered through the centuries. It is mystical, yet paradoxical, personal, yet deeply rooted in a millennia-old tradition. It's not just a philosophy, it's a path. It's called Kabbalah. What exactly is Kabbalah? Forget the Hollywood cliches and superficial interpretations. In its essence, Kabbalah is a monumental Jewish religious movement that reached its literary peak in the 13th century and exploded in popularity centuries later. But this isn't abstract thought. It's a deeply mystical pursuit that paradoxically requires unwavering adherence to Jewish law. Imagine a secret society dedicated to uncovering ultimate truths passed down from generation to generation, believed to originate from Adam himself. From its roots in ancient Babylonia, where the first sparks of this esoteric wisdom were ignited, Kabbalah flourished in medieval Spain. There, at the center of intellectual ferment, it reached its apogee, leaving behind some of its most significant texts. But the expulsion of the Jews in 1492 did not end Kabbalah. On the contrary, it found a new home, breathing life into the spiritual center of Safed, transforming it into a beacon of mystical knowledge. And here's where the most surprising part comes in. This movement, far from being an obscure academic pursuit, transformed. From the 16th century onwards, Kabbalah didn't just survive, it exploded. It became a mass religion, fueling the very currents that propelled Jewish history forward for centuries. Its influence permeated all levels of society, shaping beliefs and practices. It underlies movements that forever changed the spiritual landscape. Kabbalah, a system of Jewish mystical tradition that studies the hidden meanings of the Torah, is often associated with mysterious rituals and complex symbols. But among its most radical innovations is the introduction of the Shekhinah, an idea so bold it shook the foundations of theology at the time. It's not just a theological subtlety or a philosophical concept. The Shekhinah is a feminine divine presence within God. Yes, you heard that right, a woman in God. Why was the Shekhinah necessary? Why did this idea, which at first glance contradicts strict monotheism, gain such power? Because it answered a deeply rooted religious need. Think about it. People need connection, comfort, someone to understand them, to empathize, to guide them through life's difficulties, a figure close to them, maternal, filled with love. This is where the Zohar comes in. This epical Kabbalistic book played a key role in popularizing the Shekhinah, often affectionately called matronit. She didn't remain merely an esoteric concept for a select few. Through the Zohar, matronit became a central, beloved figure that millions embraced as an intermediary between themselves and the divine. She was the one who listened, empathized, and interceded for them before the absolute, often inaccessible, divine essence. Her popularity was undeniable. To understand the depth of this connection, consider the emotional attachment millions feel towards the Madonna in Catholic traditions, especially in Italian or Spanish villages. This maternal figure, a symbol of hope and compassion, to whom people turn in their most difficult moments. The Shekhinah, matronit, possessed a similar, if not stronger, powerful influence on people's souls. She was the comforter, the mother, the one who understood their sorrows and joys. She was their direct journey to the divine heart. Despite this boundless love and widespread acceptance, the story of matronit carries a deeper, more poignant layer. She is not only a symbol of comfort and strength, she is also a tragic figure. A figure whose destiny is intertwined with trials, with sorrow, with exile. Her story is a story of struggle, of seeking redemption, of waiting. For centuries, a name has been guarded, a word so powerful that to utter it aloud would tear the veil of reality. 4 letters intertwined in a perfect secret. They called it the Tetragrammaton, the ancient, forbidden 4-letter name of God Himself. But what if these 4 letters are more than just a name? What if they are a map, a blueprint, a key to the very essence of the divine? Throughout the centuries, many have tried to understand the meaning of YHW. For some, it was simply an unpronounceable name. But for the mystics of Kabbalah, it was something far more complex. They believed that the 4 letters were not just symbols, but an abbreviated representation of 4 different divine elements that form the very essence of the Godhead. Sounds abstract, doesn't it? But here's where it gets really interesting. For Kabbalists, these 4 elements are not just concepts, they are a family. Yes, you heard that right, a divine family. The letter Yod, Y, represents Chokmah, or wisdom. He is the Father. The first letter He, H, symbolizes Bina, or understanding. She is the Mother. The letter Vav, W, refers to Tiferet, or beauty. He is the Son. And the second letter He, H, is Malchut, or kingdom. She is the daughter. This concept overturns our traditional understanding of God, doesn't it? God is not just one all-encompassing, but rather a dynamic structure of interconnected divine aspects that function as a family. But perhaps you're thinking, this sounds like too bold an interpretation. Where does this idea of a divine family come from? And here lies the true power of Kabbalah, its ancient texts, specifically the Zohar. The Zohar, the foundational text of Kabbalah, doesn't hint at this, it explicitly describes it. The letter Yod in the name, YHW, is called Father and signifies wisdom. The first H is the supernal mother, called Understanding. And W and the second H are the two children, son and daughter, who were crowned by their mother. Do you understand the power of this? This is not a vague metaphor. This is a categorical description of the structure of the Godhead. But there's more. Wisdom spread forth and gave birth to understanding. Then these two united and illuminated each other. And H, i.e. the mother, conceived and gave birth to a son. The Zohar even describes how the mother gives birth to the son and daughter, how she nurses them and places them under the tutelage of the father and mother. These are not abstractions. These texts paint astonishingly clear narratives of a divine dynamic that may have been hidden from us until now. What does all this mean? Why is it so important to decode this ancient code? Because it gives us a fuller, more dynamic view of the divine. Instead of a static concept, we see interaction, interdependence, even development in the very essence of the Creator. This understanding allows us to see ourselves in a new light. If the divine contains these four aspects, wisdom, understanding, beauty, and kingdom, then they also exist within us. We are a reflection of that divine family. Each of us carries a piece of the Father, the Mother, the Son, and the Daughter. But is this the whole story? Of course not. Each of these sephirot, these divine manifestations, hides countless more layers of meaning. There are deep connections between them, paths waiting to be revealed. Each of these four letters is a portal to understanding not only God, but also ourselves.
Some of you have probably heard of the Tetrad, those four fundamental principles in Kabbalah, often interpreted as purely mystical symbolism, abstract ideas that represent complex spiritual concepts. And at first glance, that seems logical, doesn't it? Symbols help us understand the incomprehensible. Here, we delve into the phenomenon we call slippage. Imagine a vague concept. The more details we add to it, the more vividly and lively we describe it, the more concrete it becomes. It begins to acquire form, features, even a personality. In the case of the Kabbalistic Tetrad, these four divine elements, with their detailed descriptions of relationships, emotions, even actions, have transcended the boundaries of mere symbolism. They have slipped from abstraction into myth. Even if, at first, the Tetrad was simply an abstract speculation, these rich, almost dramatic narratives surrounding it have transformed it into something tangible in the popular imagination. The lines between a pure mystical concept and a full-blooded mythical story have blurred. It's as if these symbols have awakened and begun a life of their own. They are not merely signs to be interpreted. They are characters in a captivating, almost human drama of the divine. This idea of slippage makes us rethink how myths arise and evolve. It's not always about some initial divine revelation or an invented story. Sometimes, the detailed elaboration of a concept can turn it into a living myth. It's important to understand that this does not diminish the depth of Kabbalistic thought. On the contrary, it shows us how powerful it was, how capable of capturing the imagination and creating entire worlds. But this isn't the only surprising aspect of this revelation. The blurring of symbolism and myth, this slippage, is just the tip of the iceberg. Because while these divine elements transformed from abstractions into full-blooded characters, they didn't do it alone. There were external influences, whispers from other ancient traditions, from other mythologies, which contributed to the shaping of this divine family. Let's consider gods and goddesses in Judaism. This sounds heretical, and for many, it truly is. Throughout the centuries, many have rejected this idea as pure blasphemy. But we are not talking about a Greek pantheon or Egyptian deities. We are talking about Kabbalah, a mystical tradition that seeks to understand the hidden dimensions of the divine. And at the heart of Kabbalah, especially in its central text, the Zohar, we find hints, references, and even overt descriptions of a complex dynamic that goes far beyond the monotheistic concept we are accustomed to. To understand this hidden dynamic, we must go back to the origin of everything, to Ein Sof, the infinite, unknowable nothingness from which all existence originates. But how can an organized world arise from this absolute nothingness? This is where the Sephirot come in, the 10 divine emanations that form the tree of life. We usually see them as abstract principles or attributes of God, but the Zohar offers us a much richer, much more personal, and even dramatic interpretation. Imagine them not just as concepts, but as living, breathing entities. For example, Chokmah, wisdom, is often described as the father, and Bina, understanding, is the mother. And from their union, from their cosmic conjunction, the other Sephirot emerge, as if children, each with its own role, its own personality, its own destiny. We are talking about Keter, the crown that stands at the top, Gevurah, strength, Hesed, mercy, Tiferet, beauty, which is the heart of everything. But not everything is harmony in this divine family. As in any family, there are tensions, there are disagreements, there is even exile. The Zohar speaks of disconnections, of separations of the feminine aspects from the masculine, which is believed to cause imbalance not only in the divine realms, but also in our own world. Every mistake we make, every injustice, every pain we experience reflects these cosmic disruptions. And here comes the most striking part. The Zohar teaches that we, human beings, are not just passive observers in this cosmic drama. We are active participants. Every action we take, every mitzvah, good deed, every prayer, every intention has a direct impact on the divine realms. We can help in the restoration of this divine family, in the reunion of the separated aspects. We are co-creators, co-redeemers, working to mend the cosmic imbalance. This is not just ancient mythology. This is a map for understanding our own role in the universe. If the divine is a family with all its complexities and dramas, then we too are part of that family. We carry a fragment of this divine heritage, a divine spark that connects us directly to these cosmic energies. And so, the next time you think of the divine, don't just imagine a solitary creator far from us. Imagine a complex, dynamic, and interconnected family whose destiny is intertwined with your own. Imagine a drama unfolding on a cosmic level, in which you, through your actions and intentions, have the power to change the course of eternity. This is just the tip of the iceberg, friends. The depths of the Zohar hold many more secrets, many more dramatic revelations. If this world of hidden deities has aroused your curiosity, if this concept of a divine family has made you think, then perhaps it's time for you to start searching too. For most of us, the idea of incest is repulsive. It's associated with decay, sin, genetic deformities. But for Kabbalists, these thoughts crumble before the gates of the heavens. Their ancient texts tell us something astonishing. Above, there is neither incest, nor cutting off, nor division. Think about that. In the divine realm, our earthly understandings of prohibitions don't exist. There, perfection requires unions that are unthinkable to us. This is because Kabbalah views the divine as a unity, as Ein Sof, the infinite. From it emanate the 10 Sephirot, emanations that form the tree of life. And 2 of these Sephirot, Tiferet, called the king, and Malkut, called the matronit or Shekhinah, are considered brother and sister. Their union is not a sin, but a necessity for maintaining the divine flow and the perfection of creation. Without their merging, the universe could not function properly. But here comes the shocking twist.
While their parents, the higher Sephirot, enjoy a stable and unwavering love, the relationship between the king and the matronit is anything but calm. Forget idyllic divine harmony. Their story is marked by stormy quarrels, temporary separations, and passionate reunions. That's why Kabbalah calls them the lovers, a title that hints at a continuous dynamic, a constant dance between attraction and repulsion. What could cause such turmoil in the divine abode? Why is this union, which is so essential for cosmic completeness, filled with such drama? Why must divine entities, which represent perfection, go through challenges that so closely resemble our earthly struggles? The answer lies in the deep symbolism of these Sephirot. The king, Tiferet, represents compassion, beauty, the masculine principle, the center of consciousness. The Malkut, the divine presence in our world, the feminine principle, the kingdom, the manifestation of the divine here below. She is the collecting vessel for all emanations from above. Their quarrels are not mere whims. They symbolize cosmic processes. The separation between them can be a metaphor for the exile of the Shekhinah, for the withdrawal of the divine presence from the world due to our sins. When a person sins, they create disharmony in the upper worlds, leading to a separation between the king and the matronette. And conversely, our good deeds, our striving for perfection, help in their reunion, for tikkun, the mending of the world. Paradoxically, it is precisely this dynamism, this stormy affair, that makes their love perfect. The unwavering love of their parents is stable, yes, but the love of the king and the matronit is alive. It reflects the cycles of creation and destruction, of separation and union, which are an integral part of existence itself. They show us that even in the highest spheres, conflict is not a vice, but a driving force for development. It is necessary for growth, for correcting mistakes, and for achieving a deeper connection. Their reunions are moments of ecstasy, of divine merging, which send streams of blessings to our world. Their separations are periods of self-analysis, of transformation. They teach us that true love is not a static state, but a constant process of overcoming obstacles, of forgiveness, and of rediscovery. In their story, we see a reflection of our own relationships, our struggles, and victories. So, when Kabbalah speaks of incest and sacred unions, it doesn't call us to break our earthly laws. It takes us on a journey into the deepest levels of existence, where logic breaks down before higher truth. It reveals to us that even in the divine, drama and passion are an integral path to perfection.
Imagine that every mistake you make, every harsh word, every insidious thought doesn't just weigh on your conscience. Imagine it shakes the world, that it tears apart the very being of the divine. For millennia, ancient sages have whispered of a truth so shocking it could forever change the way you view your own actions. The truth that between humanity and the divine exists not just a connection, but a blood relation. A bond that, when broken, brings with it cosmic disaster. At the heart of Kabbalistic mysticism stands a figure, Matronit, the divine daughter. Not just an abstract concept, but a living embodiment. She was deeply connected to the people of Israel. This symbiosis, their every action, every decision, literally reflected in her very essence. This unimaginable closeness meant one thing: humanity's actions were not merely earthly affairs. They had immediate, shocking consequences in the heavenly realms. When the people of Israel succumbed to temptations, fell into sin, this directly affected the divine couple, the king and his matronit. As if they are one whole, and you are cutting that whole in two. And what was the most visible manifestation of this cosmic rupture? The destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. Not just a building, not just stones. This was their sacred bedroom, the place of divine union. The invisible consequences were far more terrifying. The king's power weakened. Imagine the most powerful being you know, drained of their life force. Why? Your sins.
This is an amazing echo of ancient mythologies. In the Hindu tradition, the mighty god Shiva is powerless without his consort Shakti. He is static energy, she is dynamic force. The idea that masculine divinity is dependent on feminine divinity is a common thread in many ancient beliefs, and Kabbalah confirms it repeatedly. A king without the matronite is not a king, is not great, and is not praised. This ancient wisdom makes us wonder, what does this mean for us today? In a world where we often feel disconnected, insignificant, this perspective shows us that we are anything but insignificant. Our actions have weight, not just in a social or ethical sense, but in a sense that transcends anything we have ever imagined. If every one of our mistakes has torn apart the very deity, then imagine, what could every good deed we do accomplish? Every apology, every act of compassion, every small step towards betterment. Perhaps it not only heals us, but heals the cosmos. This ancient secret gives us not just a reason for fear, but for immense hope. It shows us that each of us possesses the power not just to destroy, but to restore, to bring back light where there was darkness. Think about it. Your actions are not just yours, they are cosmic. And what will you do with that power?
Every decision you make, every step you take, doesn't just shape your own destiny, it changes the destiny of the gods themselves? Sounds like blasphemy, right? We're used to thinking that the divine influences us, but what if it's the other way around? What if every action you take has an immediate, almost mechanical effect on the heavenly spheres? According to Kabbalistic teachings, adultery causes a division above into two powers. It tears apart the very divine couple. Your choices, your human weaknesses, have the power to create cracks in the divine order. Do you understand what this means? Your mistake is not just yours, it is a heavenly tragedy. And it's not just negative actions. Think about something as fundamental as marriage and having children. In most traditions, these are human commandments, a way to continue the lineage, to obey God's laws. But in Kabbalah, it's much more. If a man does not marry and has no children, he is not just failing to fulfill a commandment, he diminishes the image of God himself. He violates the sacred Tetrad that represents divine completeness. The act of marriage and procreation, far from being merely an earthly obligation, becomes imitatio Dei, a profound imitation of the divine. By uniting with a spouse and bearing children, you are not just building a family, you are directly contributing to the well-being, happiness, and completeness of the supernal couple. You are participating in the co-creation of divine offspring. Your ability to create life on earth is a mirror of the divine ability to create worlds. You are co-creators. Your earthly actions have heavenly consequences, shaping not only your destiny, but also the destiny of what we call divine. And here comes the big question that must be burning in your mind. How have such seemingly polytheistic ideas become embedded in a faith strictly dedicated to one God? How does this amazing concept fit into the monotheistic framework? The answer is more complex than you imagine, and it reveals depths of thought that completely change our perspective on the divine, on humanity, and on the relationship between them. Because perhaps the unity of God is not simply an absence of multiplicity. Perhaps it is a complex, dynamic system that depends on us. How is it possible for strict monotheists who have dedicated their lives to faith in one God to accept a concept that so clearly speaks of a divine family? Father, mother, son, daughter? Of course, the Kabbalists, these guardians of wisdom, consciously resolve this paradox. For them, the father, mother, son, and daughter were not separate deities. No, they were different aspects or mysteries of the singular, unknowable deity. Deep symbolic truths, not literal beings. These archetypes represented different manifestations of the divine in the world and in the human soul. This was their intellectual answer, their logical explanation, which preserved the unity of God.
But let's be honest, on a deeper, almost subconscious, emotional level, something much more powerful was happening. This divine family evoked an immediate, visceral response in people. It satisfied a deep human longing, a longing for a God with whom you can connect, whose life reflects the complexity of your own family, of your own relationships. An emptiness that a strict, estranged God, though revered, could not completely fill. The solitary, abstract God could not reflect the multifaceted human condition of man, woman, children, of the complex dynamics that drive our lives. But this divine tetrad, however intellectually explained as symbols, resonated deeply within the human psyche. It bridged the gap between the human and divine experience. It gave form to our own inner experiences, to our relationships, to our inner wisdoms. And so, the real question is not how Kabbalah combined these ideas, but why people needed them. What does this tell us about our own nature? Are we ourselves not a microcosm of this divine family? Do these archetypes of the caring father, of the intuitive mother, of the creative son, of the receptive daughter not exist deep within ourselves? Are we seeking an external God to reflect the complexity of our inner world? Kabbalah offers us not just a story about God, but a mirror to the human soul. It invites us to look beyond the literal and discover the deep truths that live within us. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not how God was represented as a family, but how we, humans, have manifested the divine in the diversity of our own beings.
For centuries, the Zohar has been considered a purely Jewish creation, the work of Moses de Leon from the 13th century, or even earlier, of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Its divine tetrad, the four-part deity, is at the core of Kabbalistic cosmology. But here's where things get truly curious. When we compare this tetrad with similar four-part deities from Egyptian, Babylonian, or even Indian mythology, the similarities are not merely superficial. They are strikingly numerous and detailed, too numerous to be called a mere coincidence. This leads us to a daring hypothesis. Is it possible that Moses de Leon was unconsciously influenced by older, non-Jewish religious systems? Let's consider a specific case. Think of Abraham Abulafia, a contemporary of de Leon. His mystical practices, his methods of contemplation, surprisingly reflect Indian yoga techniques. And now ask yourself, if yoga could travel to Spain in the 13th century through the complex paths of Arab intermediaries and merchants, then why not the knowledge of Indian mythology? It's not far-fetched to assume, especially when we find parallels that are almost identical. For example, the concept of a god who is powerless without the goddess. This idea, so crucial in the Zohar, is formulated in almost the same way in Indian mythology. This is not just an interesting coincidence. This is an earthquake in our understanding of the Zohar's origins. It suggests that Moses de Leon, perhaps without even fully realizing it, drew from a much broader, ancient, mythical raw material than we had previously imagined. He wove these threads, these forgotten echoes of the past, into the rich, complex fabric of the Zohar's secret divine family. The Zohar is not just a Jewish book. It is a universal archive of ancient knowledge, disguised as a religious text. At the heart of Kabbalah, hidden among the complex teachings of Moses de Leon, lies a paradox. He sought to explain the four mystical aspects of the unified Godhead, but in his fervent desire to give form to these ideas, he did something far more fundamental. He created a myth of a divine family, a father and mother, their son and daughter, their tumultuous relationships, their deep connections to each other, and, most intriguingly, their indissoluble bond with us, humans. He tried to build a doctrine of quaternity, but instead, he gifted the world with the myth of a tetrad, a group of four distinct yet vital deities. But why is this so captivating? Why has this very concept, shrouded in mysticism, propelled the Zohar and all of Kabbalah to such remarkable popularity? The answer is not merely intellectual.
Readers weren't just gaining insight into the divine, they were deriving deep, almost sensuous satisfaction from learning about the intimate lives of this secret divine tetrad. Imagine a mythical endorsement of their own lives, reflecting the human condition at the very heart of the divine. It's as if your very existence finds a mirror in the highest spheres of being. This hidden family, cloaked in layers of allegory and symbols, continues to provoke and inspire us. It offers us a glimpse into a side of spirituality rarely discussed openly, because it is too personal, too human. Consider, while we seek meaning in our own families, in our own relationships, it turns out that ancient mystics may have found a reflection of this in the very structure of the divine. This is an intimacy that transcends understanding. But if this hidden family is so central to Kabbalah, what else lies hidden in these ancient texts? What other secrets might they hold about the true nature of the divine? And how might these revelations change the way we view ourselves? Because if the divine contains within itself love, conflict, and growth, just as we do, then the boundary between the human and the divine thins beyond recognition. How deeply has this secret family permeated the fabric of our understanding of reality?
So, what does all of this truly mean? Moses de Leon, the author of the Zohar, consciously presented his teachings as an exploration of the four mystical aspects of the unified God. He wanted to explain the fourfold state of the Godhead. But in his fervent desire to breathe life into these ideas, he did something far more powerful, perhaps even without fully realizing it. He inadvertently created a profound mythic cycle, a narrative about a divine family, about the marriage of the father and mother, the birth of their son and daughter, their tumultuous relationships, and their deep, indissoluble bond with us, humans. Instead of simply a doctrine of unity, he gifted the world with a myth of a tetrad, a group of four distinct yet vital deities. It is precisely this powerful combination, conscious symbolic interpretation and subconscious emotional resonance, that propelled the Zohar and all of Kabbalah to such remarkable popularity. Readers weren't just gaining intellectual insight into the divine. They were drawing deep, almost sensuous satisfaction from learning about the sexual and familial life of this secret divine tetrad. Because this was a mythical endorsement of their own lives, reflecting the human condition at the very heart of the divine. This hidden family, shrouded in layers of mysticism, continues to provoke and inspire us. It offers us a glimpse into a side of spirituality rarely discussed, because it is too intimate, too human. What other secrets might ancient texts hold about the true nature of the divine? And how might these revelations change the way we view ourselves and our place in the universe? Subscribe for more revelations about the hidden secrets of the world.